Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a question that could shift the entire direction of your life. What would your life look like if God was the CEO of every decision you made? I ain't talking about just calling on Him when it's falling apart. I'm talking about keeping Him in the driver's seat before you make the turn. Because let's be real, some of us don't pray until the storm is already tearing the house apart. We wait until we're broke, heartbroken, stressed out, and then we say, God, where you at? But what if I told you the reason some doors ain't opening, the reason some relationships keep failing, the reason you keep repeating the same lessons is because you've been making decisions without God at the table? See, this message right here, it's not just motivational, it's spiritual. It's a wake-up call, because until you learn to keep God in every decision, from the big moves to the small steps, you will keep wondering why your path feels off even when it looks good. So I want you to stay with me for this whole message. Don't skip it, don't scroll, because if you can grasp this truth and apply it this week, your entire direction could change, not someday, but today. You're not built to carry the weight of every decision alone. That's not weakness, that's design. See, somewhere along the way, life taught us to be self-made, independent, figure-it out on your own type of people. And that sounds good on paper, sounds real strong and bold, but the truth is, trying to handle every decision by yourself will wear you out, stress you out, and break you down in places you didn't even know could crack. Because life will hit you with situations that logic can't fix, money can't buy, and talent can't overcome. It's in those moments where your strength will hit its limit, and that's exactly where you need something bigger than you. That's where God is supposed to be, not as your backup plan, but as your blueprint from the start. You ever notice how the biggest mistakes in your life happened when you leaned only on your own understanding? You thought that relationship was right. You thought that job was perfect. You thought moving to that city would solve your problems. And now, looking back, you realize you were missing one voice in the room. God's. You didn't pray on it. You didn't wait for peace. You didn't check if that opportunity lined up with your calling. You just moved, fast and emotional, and now you're trying to untangle the mess. That's what happens when we take the wheel and push him into the back seat. We end up making permanent decisions based on temporary feelings, and then we ask God to come fix something we never asked him to guide in the first place. When you keep God in your decisions, you don't just get direction, you get clarity, you get confirmation, you get strength to walk away from what looks good but ain't right, and you get courage to say yes to what looks scary but is actually part of your purpose. That's what makes the difference, because some doors open easy but they're traps, some people come sweet but they're distractions, some offers look like blessings, but they come with strings that tie your spirit up. Only God can help you discern the difference. You don't get that kind of vision from a YouTube video or a motivational podcast. You get it from sitting still, praying and listening for the whisper that says, "This is the way, walk in it." But see, the reason so many people avoid bringing God into their decisions is because they already know he's going to say something different than what they want to hear, so they avoid it. They don't pray about that person because deep down they already know God wouldn't approve. They don't pray about that move because they know it's not aligned, but ignoring him doesn't remove his truth. It just delays your breakthrough. It just prolongs your peace. And let me tell you, there's nothing worse than climbing a ladder your whole life, only to find out it was leaning against the wrong wall. That's what happens when you chase success without seeking his will. You end up full on the outside and starving on the inside. Keeping God in every decision doesn't mean life gets easier. It means life gets asterisk anchored asterisk. It means even when things get hard, you're not lost. Even when the plan shifts, you're not shaken. Even when doors close, you don't panic. Because you know who's writing your story. You stop needing everyone's approval. You stop chasing validation. You stop running yourself into the ground trying to figure it all out alone. Because when you let God in at the beginning, you don't have to beg Him to come rescue you at the end. You walk with assurance, you walk with grace, you walk with wisdom, and that's the kind of walk that leads to real peace, real power, and real purpose. There are moments in life when everything looks good on the surface. The numbers add up, the people seem right, the timing feels perfect. You get excited, your emotions get involved, and your mind starts racing toward the outcome. But just because it looks right doesn't mean it is right. That's where we get in trouble. We lean on our eyes, our logic, our gut. But what happens when the thing that looks like a blessing turns out to be a burden? What do you do when the opportunity you were praising becomes the decision you regret? That's what happens when we run ahead of God, when we treat Him like an afterthought instead of the source. Because while you're staring at the outside, God sees what's underneath. He sees the intention behind the handshake. He sees the storm coming down the road. He sees the trap wrapped in good timing, and that's exactly why you don't wait until you're halfway in the mess to invite Him. You ask Him first. Let me tell you something real. Your vision is limited. I don't care how smart you are, how educated you are, or how many followers you've got. There are rooms you can't see into, hearts you can't read, consequences you can't predict. You might know the facts, but God knows the truth. And when you try to play God by making decisions based on what's visible, you set yourself up to fall for things that look divine but are dressed up distractions. That's why we pray before we sign. That's why we seek before we step. Because when God says no, He's not punishing you. He's protecting you from what your eyes haven't caught yet. And when He says wait, it's not a delay, it's a shield. But if you never invite Him into the process, you'll miss that protection. Some of the biggest regrets in your life came from rushing decisions that felt urgent but weren't God approved. And now, looking back, you can say, man, I wish I had prayed first. That relationship, that partnership, that move you went in based on excitement, not wisdom, and wisdom only comes when you slow down enough to ask God for it. He's not hiding answers from you. He's waiting for you to ask the right question. Lord, is this you? That one question can save you years of stress. That one question can stop you from building a life you'll want to escape from later. Because God's vision goes beyond the moment. He sees how today's yes becomes tomorrow's consequence, or tomorrow's miracle. But here's the part that makes people uncomfortable. When you invite God early, He might shift the plan you were already excited about. And that hurts. That's disappointing because your heart was already in it. You had your hopes up. But if you trust Him, really trust Him, you've got to believe that if He removes it, He's making room for better. That's faith, not just in what He can do, but in what He knows. He knows who's real. He knows what will grow you. He knows what you're not ready for yet. And sometimes He blocks what you want so He can prepare you for what you were made for. So before you make that next decision, before you text back, before you say yes, before you sign the dotted line, you've got to pause, take a breath, invite Him in, because the one who created your path sees the full map. He's not just guessing. He's not just hoping it works out. He's the one who already knows how it ends. So why would you trust your limited vision over his perfect view? That's not just risky, that's reckless. And you've come too far, been through too much, and grown too wise to keep making decisions based on emotion when you have access to divine guidance that never misses. We live in a world where everybody is chasing results. People think peace comes from having it all figured out, from closing the deal, getting the job, fixing the relationship, or finally hitting that goal. But the truth is, real peace doesn't come from what happens. It comes from knowing you followed what God told you to do, because outcomes will fool you. Sometimes you'll do everything right, and things still won't work the way you planned. Sometimes you'll take a step that feels risky, and it won't give you results right away. If your peace is tied to success, you'll be anxious every time something takes longer than you expected. You'll doubt yourself every time the results are delayed. But when your peace is rooted in obedience, not the outcome, you can rest even in uncertainty, even in storms, even in silence. Because you know you moved with God, not against Him. See, there's a type of peace that doesn't make sense to the world. It's the peace that shows up when the bills are due, but you're still tithing. It's the peace that lets you walk away from something good because God said it's not best. It's the peace that doesn't shake when other people don't understand your choices because you weren't following them, you were following Him. That kind of peace doesn't come from everything going right. It comes from everything being aligned. When you're obedient to what God tells you to do, when you trust Him enough to say yes when it's hard and no when it's tempting, you sleep better, you walk lighter. You stop overthinking and second guessing because you know you're covered. You know even if it doesn't work how you thought, it'll work out for your good. But obedience is tough. Let's not act like it's easy. Sometimes God will ask you to do the opposite of what makes sense. He'll ask you to be quiet when you want to speak. He'll ask you to wait when you want to move. He'll ask you to love people who don't love you back. And if your heart is tied to the result instead of the instruction, you'll struggle, you'll hesitate, you'll keep asking, but what's going to happen if I do this? That's not faith, that's control, and obedience requires surrender. It requires saying, God, I trust you even when I don't understand you. I'll follow your lead even when the outcome isn't clear. I'll obey not because it feels good, but because you are good. Some of y'all are tired not because of the weight on your shoulders, but because of the resistance in your spirit. You're fighting the instructions God already gave you. You're looking for another sign, another confirmation, another shortcut. But peace won't come from delay. It comes from doing the thing He already said. The longer you avoid obedience, the more you invite confusion. The more you delay, the heavier the decision feels. But the moment you surrender, the moment you stop trying to make it make sense and just move in faith, peace floods in, not because everything's perfect, but because you're finally walking with purpose, and that's what your soul has been craving the whole time. Not results, not applause, just the deep, quiet confidence that you are where you're supposed to be, doing what you were called to do, regardless of how it looks on the outside. That's the peace that sustains you through storms, through delays, through setbacks. Not peace from the outcome, but peace from the obedience. Prayer was never meant to be your backup plan. It was meant to be your first move, your steering wheel, the thing that sets direction before you even press the gas. But too many people treat prayer like the spare tire in the trunk. They don't touch it until there's an emergency. They don't think about it until the car breaks down, the dream falls apart, the relationship crashes, or the job lets them go. And then suddenly they're praying out of panic, not purpose. But prayer isn't just for breakdowns. It's not just for desperate moments. It's supposed to guide your everyday movement. It's supposed to be the thing that helps you turn before you end up in places you were never meant to be. Because when you don't pray first, you end up leaning on your own understanding, and that will always take you off course. See, a lot of us are good at talking to everybody but God. We'll get on the phone and vent for an hour. We'll post on social media. We'll ask 10 different people for advice. But the one who knows the beginning from the end, the one who already sees the trap that's being set, the blessing that's about to come, the lesson you're about to learn, we leave him on hold like he's not the one driving this whole thing. We make moves and then ask him to bless them after. But that's backwards. That's like building a house and asking for the blueprint when you're already hanging drywall. You don't pray to fix the path. You pray to find the path. You pray to align, not just to escape consequences. Because when prayer becomes your steering wheel, you don't just move, you move right. And let me say this, you don't need fancy words. You don't need a perfect setting. You just need real connection. God ain't looking for polished speeches. He's looking for surrendered hearts. He wants to be invited in before you start the business, before you say yes to that person, before you make that move. And when you do that, when you put prayer in front of the decision instead of behind it, you start to notice something different. You don't panic the same. You don't doubt the same. You don't rush the same, because you're being led, not pushed. And when God is leading, even the slow steps are sacred. Even the delays have direction. But the enemy would love to convince you that prayer is optional. He'd love to keep you so busy, so distracted, that you don't even realize you've been driving on E with no GPS. That's when burnout hits. That's when confusion creeps in. That's when you start chasing validation instead of vision. Because without prayer, you can still move, but you're just guessing, you're reacting, not responding. And that's a dangerous way to live, especially when the decisions you're making right now are shaping your future. The job you take, the person you trust, the doors you walk through, they all carry weight. And if you're not letting God guide that weight, you're risking everything for a result you can't even predict. The power of prayer isn't just in what it changes around you, it's in what it changes in you. It calms your anxiety, it aligns your priorities, it sharpens your focus, it reminds you that you're not doing this alone. That's why it needs to be the wheel, not the tire. Because when prayer leads, peace follows. When prayer leads, wisdom shows up. When prayer leads, you stop settling for good enough and start stepping into God's best. And it's not about praying more, it's about praying first. Before the noise, before the doubt, before the decision. Because when God is driving, you may not always know where you're going, but you can trust you're going the right way. Everybody's out here chasing favor. They want the win, they want the spotlight, they want the blessings, and there's nothing wrong with wanting more. But here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Favor doesn't follow hustle alone, it follows faithfulness. See, ambition can get you started. Ambition can open a few doors. But if you want lasting success, the kind that doesn't fall apart under pressure, you need something deeper. You need faithfulness. You need that quiet, consistent obedience to what God told you to do even when it's hard, even when it's slow, even when nobody is watching. Because that's where the real favor is found, not in the loud, flashy moments, but in the private decisions to stay the course when everything in you wants to quit. You can be talented and still not be trusted. You can be gifted and still miss your moment, because favor doesn't rest on potential, it rests on stewardship. What are you doing with what God already gave you? Are you showing up when it's not convenient? Are you being excellent when no one is clapping for you? Are you being consistent when the doors haven't opened yet? Or are you only motivated by what you can see? Because let me tell you something, God doesn't bless based on emotion, He blesses based on alignment. And faithfulness is the language of alignment. It says, I'm going to keep doing what you told me to do, even when it feels like nothing's happening, because I trust that you see me and you're not wasting my obedience. That's the problem with a lot of ambition today. It's loud, it's aggressive, it wants everything now. It gets mad when things take time. But God's favor doesn't move on your clock. It moves on His. And if you're not careful, you'll start comparing your timing to someone else's highlight reel and think God forgot about you. You'll think, I'm grinding just like they are. Why am I not seeing results? But what you don't know is that favor is built in the waiting. It's built in the discipline. It's built in the mornings where you choose prayer over panic. It's built in the moments you decide to walk away from shortcuts because you'd rather be blessed than just successful. And when favor hits, it makes no sense to the people watching. They'll say, how did they get that promotion? How did that door open? But what they didn't see was the years of hidden faithfulness. They didn't see the nights you prayed through tears. They didn't see the decisions you made in silence. They didn't see you walking with God when walking away would have been easier. And that's why God's favor falls, not because you shouted the loudest, not because you knew the right people, but because you stayed faithful in the shadows. And God always rewards what's done in secret. Ambition says, let me make it happen. Faithfulness says, let me let God build it. Ambition will have you burning out trying to force things. Faithfulness will have you walking in peace because you know you're in purpose. And favor always finds the faithful. It may not come when you want, but when it does, it will be undeniable. It will be unshakable. It will be tailor-made just for you. And when people try to figure out how you got where you are, they'll have no choice but to admit it was nothing but the grace of God meeting a faithful heart. Because in the end, favor isn't earned through ambition. It's released through obedience, through patience, through trust. And the ones who understand that, they don't chase blessings. They walk with the one who gives them.